The heavy wooden doors of the courthouse creaked open, echoing down the high-ceilinged hall. Inside, the air was thick with anticipation and whispered conversations. The murmur of the crowded courtroom was punctuated by the sharp tap of the judge's gavel as it called for order. Judge Malcolm Harris sat behind the bench, his eyes fixed intently on the defendant, a young black man named Darius Collins. Darius stood tall but calm, dressed sharply in a worn but clean suit, his hands folded in front of him. The weight of the room's gaze pressed down on him, yet his expression held steady, determined. Across the room, the prosecutor, Nathaniel Price, adjusted his tie and smirked confidently. His voice was smooth but carried a biting edge as he addressed the court. "Your Honor, the evidence against Mr. Collins is clear. This isn't about race, it's about the law." His gaze flicked toward Darius, but it was the tone behind the words that cut sharper than any knife. The jury watched closely, the spectators leaned forward, sensing something more was at stake. Price paced slowly before the jury, his voice rising with conviction. "Mr. Collins was found at the scene with stolen property. There's no room for excuses. He is guilty." Darius's defense attorney, a woman named Lisa Reynolds, exchanged a quick, tense glance with him. She knew the odds were stacked against them, but Darius had something in him that no statistic or stereotype could explain. Then Price dropped a comment that silenced the room. "Your Honor, with all due respect, I believe this case also speaks to a pattern we see too often in our community. A disregard for property and the law that plagues certain neighborhoods." A ripple of discomfort passed through the courtroom. Darius's jaw tightened. Lisa's eyes flashed, but before she could respond, Judge Harris raised a hand. "Counselor Price, tread carefully," the judge warned, his voice steady but firm. "The court will not tolerate prejudice disguised as argument." Price's smirk faltered for a moment. He straightened up, but his eyes narrowed with barely concealed irritation. Then came the moment no one expected. Judge Harris leaned forward, fixed Price with a piercing stare and said, "If you continue down this path, you will answer for it in this court. Proceed with your case without bias." A hush fell over the room. The tension was palpable. The eyes of everyone, from jury to gallery, were glued to the judge's commanding presence. And just as Price opened his mouth to retort, the courtroom doors burst open. The sudden opening of the courtroom doors startled everyone. A man in a crisp suit hurried in, carrying a thick file. Judge Harris's gaze flicked toward the newcomer, then back to the prosecutor. The man approached the bench quietly but with purpose. "Your Honor," he said, voice steady, "I have new evidence that may affect the case." A murmur ran through the gallery. Darius's eyes locked onto the file, hope flickering in their depths. Judge Harris nodded, signaling for the man to proceed. The tension in the room thickened as Price's confident facade momentarily cracked. The man handed the file to the judge. Judge Harris opened it slowly, scanning the pages with a frown. His brow furrowed deeper with each turn. "What is this?" Price demanded, voice tight. "An attempt to delay proceedings?" The judge raised a hand. "Silence. This is official documentation submitted by the local police department." He held up a report. "It contains a witness statement that contradicts the prosecution's timeline." Price leaned forward. "Your Honor, that witness is unreliable and irrelevant." "Enough," Judge Harris interrupted sharply. "This court requires full transparency. The witness states that Mr. Collins was not present at the scene when the alleged crime occurred. This directly challenges the prosecution's case." The courtroom erupted in whispers. The jury shifted uneasily. Darius straightened, swallowing the lump in his throat. Price's face darkened. He glanced at the jury, then back at the judge. "This is circumstantial at best. We have physical evidence linking Mr. Collins to the stolen property." Lisa Reynolds rose, seizing the moment. "Your Honor, if I may?" Her voice was calm but resolute. "The evidence the prosecution presents is incomplete and biased. This new testimony demands further scrutiny." Judge Harris nodded, eyes never leaving Price. "Counselor Price, do you have anything to counter the report?" Price hesitated, searching his notes. "No, Your Honor, but the fingerprints and possession still stand." Judge Harris's expression hardened. Possession without context is not proof of guilt. The prosecution's failure to disclose this witness until now raises serious questions. He turned to the jury. "You must consider whether reasonable doubt exists." The room fell silent. Then Price, flustered, stood abruptly. "Your Honor, this is an attempt to distract from the facts. We request to proceed." Judge Harris's voice was cold. "Not until this matter is fully investigated." The courtroom door opened again. The bailiff announced, "All proceedings are suspended pending review." Darius exhaled deeply, a mix of relief and disbelief washing over him. The judge's final words before recess echoed, "This court will not be complicit in prejudice or rushed judgments." Outside the courtroom, the whispers of hope began to swell. The courtroom emptied slowly, the weight of what had just happened lingering in the air. Darius sat quietly, his heart pounding as his lawyer Lisa approached. "We're not out of the woods yet," she said softly, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "But this is a turning point." Outside, reporters gathered near the courthouse steps, eager to catch a glimpse of the young man at the center of the storm. Cameras flashed and microphones were thrust forward, but Darius stayed calm, avoiding the spotlight. Later that afternoon, the police department released a statement confirming the authenticity of the new witness testimony. The statement detailed how the witness had initially been overlooked due to miscommunication, but had come forward to set the record straight. Meanwhile, in his modest apartment, Darius reflected on everything that had led to this moment. Growing up in a neighborhood often stereotyped and misunderstood, he had witnessed firsthand the unfair assumptions cast on people like him. He thought about his mother, a school teacher who had always stressed the importance of knowledge and dignity. "You can't control what they say," she told him once, "but you can control how you respond." Darius had taken those words to heart, preparing for this day not just with facts but with a fierce resolve to stand tall. Back in court as the trial resumed, the mood was different. Judge Harris maintained a watchful eye, ensuring fairness and order. The prosecutor, Nathaniel Price, appeared less confident, his earlier arrogance replaced by caution. Lisa seized the moment, methodically dismantling the prosecution's case. She highlighted the new evidence and questioned the validity of the fingerprint analysis, pointing out procedural errors and the lack of expert testimony. The jury listened closely, their expressions shifting as doubt crept in. At one point, Judge Harris interrupted. "Mr. Price, the court expects full cooperation and truthfulness. This trial must be about justice, not prejudice." Price's response was curt, but the message was clear. The tide was turning. As the final arguments closed, the courtroom held its breath. The courtroom fell into a heavy silence as Judge Harris prepared to deliver his verdict. All eyes were on him, the jury, the attorneys, the spectators. The tension was almost unbearable. Judge Harris looked directly at Darius, then at the prosecutor. His voice was calm but carried the weight of authority. "After careful consideration of all evidence and testimony, this court finds that reasonable doubt exists regarding the defendant's involvement." A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. The judge continued, "The prosecution has failed to provide conclusive proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The court cannot convict a man based on bias, assumptions, or incomplete evidence." Turning to Price, Judge Harris added, "This court expects the legal profession to uphold justice without prejudice. Attempts to sway judgment through racial bias will not be tolerated." Price sat back, defeated, while the courtroom erupted in whispers and murmurs of relief. Darius's shoulders relaxed, the burden that had weighed on him beginning to lift. Lisa gave him a small, proud smile. Judge Harris then addressed the courtroom one final time. "Let this case serve as a reminder. Justice must be blind to color and rooted in truth." As he banged the gavel, signaling the end of the trial, some spectators clapped quietly, others simply wiped tears. Outside the courthouse, news crews awaited Darius. Cameras flashed as he stepped into the light, his voice steady and clear. "This victory is not just mine," he said. "It's for everyone who's been judged unfairly. We deserve justice, dignity, and respect." The crowd erupted in cheers. Days after the trial, the story of Darius Collins spread across the city. His courage to stand firm against prejudice sparked conversations far beyond the courthouse walls. In a quiet moment, Darius sat with his mother in their modest living room. "You showed them who you really are," she said softly, tears glistening in her eyes. "You taught them that we won't be silenced." Darius nodded, feeling the weight of both relief and responsibility. This wasn't just a personal win, it was a challenge to a system too often blind to bias. Judge Harris's words echoed in his mind, "Justice must be blind to color and rooted in truth." He knew many like him still faced those blind spots every day. But now he believed change was possible. The fight was far from over, but today marked a step forward. A reminder that standing up with knowledge and dignity can make a difference. Stories like Darius's show us how deeply bias can infect justice, and how powerful courage can be in pushing back. It's a call to examine our own prejudices, to demand fairness, and to support those who bravely seek it. If Darius's story moved you, share it. Talk about it. Stand against injustice wherever you see it. Subscribe to this channel for more stories that expose truth, inspire hope and fuel change. Together we can build a world where justice truly belongs to all.